So Joe and I were talking about spring and color and flowers as we planned this presentation. And this slide background just really spoke to me. It has that nice 1960s psychedelic kind of feel.
That's exactly what I thought too, Tom. Psychedelic.
Psychedelic.
Yes.
So we'd like to talk to you all about this concept of the longevity dividend, what it means, what it might mean, what it could mean. It's actually a concept in gerontology that's been around for a number of years, but it's also a concept that I don't think a lot of people in the general community know. And I think there are different nuances to it, and we're going to talk about some of those different nuances. So let's see if I can change my slide here. There we go. So for our agenda, we've kind of just gone through the welcome and introduction. So I can say I direct the Center for Excellence in Aging and Health for anybody who's new. I've been with UNE now 2.5 years, and I'm a clinical psychologist by background. And Joe, you wanted to say a little introduction to yourself?
Yes, I'll say hello to myself. Thank you. Joe Wolfberg. I've been at the university for almost 26 years. That's not who I am. Who I am is I'm an aging man who continues to seek the truth. So I'm a seeker of the truth, and I hope with this longevity dividend that we're all going to find some new truth today. So that's where I'm at.
All right, love it. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
So we're going to talk about what is the longevity dividend, and we're going to be using a polling feature that I'll explain to you in a little bit, where you'll be able to interact and we'll see the audience responses on screen. Joe is going to share his personal testimony of how he views the longevity dividend from his position as a man in his, well, we won't say your age yet, Joe. You can say it if you want to. And I want to talk about what it also means for us in pandemic and beyond, and perhaps some implications for us as a group of legacy scholars. The picture to the right is a person who, in my mind, represents an aspect of the longevity dividend. Marjorie Allen was a good friend of mine in St. Louis, and allowed classes of my gerontology students into her home. We actually held class at her dining room table, on the floor in her living room. And she taught in the same school district for 72 years. She died just shy of her 100th birthday. And I have a lot more that I could say about Marge, and maybe I will as we talk about how I think Marge represents the longevity dividend a little bit later. So there's a researcher by the name of Jay Olshansky, who is the most prolific author about the longevity dividend. So if you Google him and longevity dividend, you'll turn up many of his articles and papers. And he says in 2018, with declining early age mortality and a shift in the age distribution of death, the population of the US and much of humanity in general achieved exactly what was desired: the first longevity revolution. The 30-year increase in life expectancy at birth in the past century is one of humanity's greatest achievements. And as you know, we live a lot longer on average today than we did a century ago. What it means to be old is different. At 57, my age today, I would have been considered quite elderly in 1921. Because the majority of people wouldn't have even made it to my age. And yet think about the age range in our room today and among our peers and the people we know in our communities. So we're going to do our first poll to get us into this. And we're using a tool called Poll Everywhere. First, you don't have to do this. It's going to require a little bit of techno juggling. And so you can also choose to sit back and watch what others do. But if you're willing to give this a shot, while you keep our Zoom meeting open, if you open another window on your browser, or if you have a smartphone and can simply open the browser, like if you have an iPhone, you can open your Safari browser. and you put in this address, the longevity dividend, what does it mean to you? So if you go to that address, you should be able to see the ability to type in, I hope. Of course, I'll try new technology. Oh, it's working for somebody. So the longevity dividend means aging better, living longer. Yeah.
Could I, so you said, I got to that screen of username and, after the slash, and you said type TOMM 522?
TOMMEUSER
Oh,
522.
your whole name. Oh.
My whole name, but with no space. So TOMMEUSER 522, and you'll turn up. So once you're done typing what you think the longevity dividend is on that screen, if you go back to the Zoom screen where we're all visiting with each other, you'll actually see this word cloud growing. And the way a word cloud works is the larger the word, the bigger the meaning for the group. So I see the word longer is a word that's coming up big. That means a number of you have typed that word, because the longevity dividend to you means, I'm assuming, longer life.
Okay,
so if you want to, again, not required, no one's required to do this, but this is a way of, we use this with students to get them engaged. Okay, I see the word functional. That's interesting. It could be better life, could be functional life. Longevity dividend is retirement. Maybe it's longer time in retirement. I see the word quality. That's a good word. Okay. So we're going to let you leave this up just for another moment. Any else want to type in any other words that you can, or phrases you want to emphasize? So we're gaining new experience, having purpose. I think that's important. If you might be lucky if you live a long life, huh? I hope we're all lucky. I feel lucky today. I was telling Joe before you all came on, I'm in a playful mood today. Gratitude. All right. So I want to stop here for a second. We're going to stop the sharing and just talk a little bit as a group. So as you thought about what you were going to type in to express what you believe the longevity dividend is, let's talk about some of the concepts that came up. The person who typed gratitude, what were you thinking with that?
Well, hi, Tom. It's Heather.
Hi, Heather.
And I was just feeling overall grateful for the fact that I've arrived at almost 80 and feel fairly well and active and enjoying life. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I imagine that's a sentiment that is shared by many here. How about the person who typed purpose? Would you share what your thinking is on typing purpose?
I did that. I'm still looking for it, and I'm hoping I'll live long enough to figure it out. That'll be my dividend.
Mm-hmm. So with purpose, does that come maybe some form of contribution? Some form of impact, perhaps?
Yes.
Okay. Great. A lot of people typed the word longer. Some of you typed healthy. I'm curious what your thinking is about typing healthy.
Yeah, I typed healthy, Tom. It's because it's a term I've been using for a very long time, and I interpret it very broadly. It isn't just physical health; it's mental health. It's the whole schmear.
Mm-hmm.
And if we think about that, we're going to get a lot more out of our life as we get older.
Thank you. And thanks, Star, for helping with some instructions on the poll everywhere. I appreciate that in the chat. So Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're gonna keep moving ahead here. So I think the longevity dividend is a concept that has many meanings, and it depends on often, I think, where you sit in the process of your own aging. But there are also perspectives about the longevity dividend that professionals who work in aging have. So what is the longevity dividend? Well, I mentioned J. Olshansky. Here's another quote from him. The combined social, economic, and health bonuses accruing from a slowing of the rate of aging is what we call the longevity dividend. Benefits that might begin with those now alive and then continue for all generations to follow. So there is a movement in the field of gerontology and geriatrics to shift the dialogue from aging with disease to aging better with longer health. So that word of health is really important. And there's a concept related to longevity dividend we're going to talk about in a moment that gets at the kind of quality of life that might be possible in a period of dividend. The second quote here, extending healthy years of life and reducing frailty and dependency to a minimum within a lifetime would also provide sizable social and economic benefits. Studies have detailed the contributions of productively engaged older persons in roles as active consumers, producers, investors, and volunteers. So we're gonna, I want to think about these definitions a little bit. We'll go into this a little bit more, but if we assume the longevity dividend is real, and maybe it's a good thing, what do you think are the necessary conditions for it to support quality of life for all people? What must we have to experience a longevity dividend?
Well, I think you need sufficient, you need income stability or security. Income security, I think, goes a long way, because with that, then you have food security, housing security, just so many things makes your life easier as you age.
So if you're struggling at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs with the very basics,
Yeah.
then you might not really enjoy a longevity dividend or experience a positive from it.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think people who worry all the time, you know, if you have constant worry and a big area of worry, I mean, there's a lot of areas of worry. Health, of course, is another one, but you know, a sufficient income to support you in those many more years, it goes a very long way towards happiness, I think, or at least lesser anxiety. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, thank you. David?
Yeah, Tom, so, you know, bringing up this discussion, I think I have more questions than I have comments, because, you know, one of the things that Jessica just, you know, made mention of is having adequate financial stability, so that you are able to enjoy. Also, are we really functionally aging well? You know, if you look at the data, are we actually seeing where people are? I think in that last slide, something about aging had to do with decreased frailty. Are we really less frail? I mean, it seems that way, but what's the reality? I mean, if we look at the people here, we're doing pretty good. But as you know, we're a different group, you know, than most aging adults.
Yeah, comment well taken. There's great diversity of what it means to age and age functionally and well. Fran?
Yeah, I think also having the opportunity and the ability to engage in our communities. I think that definitely it makes age just something for which to be grateful. And I'm thinking of Richard Rohr's great book, Falling Upwards.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the second half of life, we're going up, we're not going over the hill.
That's a great book, by the way, if anyone's
Yeah.
not read it. Star, you were going to comment?
Yes, I was going to say, build on Jessica's comments on the security, because once you have the security, then you can look for your purpose. And I know that's been important for me after I had to retire early due to health issues, but without purpose, I don't think I'd be doing as well as I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm. So that taking advantage of longevity means having a base upon which you're to build, and having a sense of what that contribution or purpose is that you wish to make. Yeah. Any other thoughts before I go to the next slide?
Ted has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, I can't see everybody. Yeah, Ted.
Yeah, building on what everybody else has said, then there's certain things we can't control, and that's physical health and the security somewhat. But I'd add an attitude, positive attitude that we're not in a state of general decline, can't do, withdraw, but there's new kinds of vistas opening, and we have to have the attitude, okay, can do, or if we fall down, immediately get up and keep going. It's that kind of attitude I think is really important. Because thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we've touched on a number of the, I think, conditions that are necessary to, if we think about the longevity dividend as an extra period of well aging, when one can be as contributory and engaged and have meaning in life, similar to maybe when one was 50. A lot depends on our status, our socioeconomic status, just the realities of how we age, and some of it's luck. And even that word came up. Okay, we're going to do another poll. And this is how much longer would you like to live? Of course, this is very subjective, and we're all different ages in this group, but I'd be curious. I'm just curious what people are thinking. Or maybe it's none of the above. You just don't want to commit to a number. That's fine too. Because I think also, I mean, and Ted brought up longevity, attitude. I mean, attitude plays a role in longevity, and I think the longevity in making the most of this dividend. And I think this really came up in what Star had to say too. There's a decision, there's intention, there's effort involved in this. So it's interesting. Everybody wants more than at least 5 years. I would agree with that. So my wife and I met with a retirement planner earlier this week, because we're just starting to think about that and make sure that we have our resources in line. And she says, well, the program I'm filling out requires me to tell me what age you expect to die. And I was like, oh my goodness. But I, as the typical gerontologist, I thought about my parents and other older adults in my family, and I calculated an age, and I gave 88 is the age I gave. So for me, I guess I'd answer this question. I want to be around another 30, at least another 30 more years. So what went into your thinking about answering this question? Anyone want to share? Yeah, David. You're muted.
Thank you. So I was thinking about, my current age, the age that my parents passed away, what I'd like to do, concerns that, I put another 20 years, which would take me up to 90. And, not sure, about the frailty thing, how much longer I want to do after getting to a frail stage. Do I want to continue? But that's just my thinking.
Yeah. there's desire and intent. There's also the uncertainty factor that you bring up as well. Anyone else want to share your thought process in answering? Dina?
I'm still not on the poll, but I'm doing my best to get here. I'd rather learn from listening, but I have to say, when my granddaughter a few years ago noticed that my hands were kind of wrinkly and I told her I was getting old, she said, "Oh, Bubby, you're going to die." And I said, "Oh, honey, not for another 30 years, which would take me to 100, okay?" I said, "You're going to be 30. Don't you worry about it." So that's why I want to live to 100.
So you can answer this question based upon like an actuarial computation. Honestly, that's how I answered the retirement planner, or you can answer it based on your feeling and your aspiration, which is, I think, how maybe you answered, Dina, for your granddaughter. If I can read into it.
Yes.
Yeah. Star.
I immediately thought about what kind of physical shape I will be in. Will I be able to do this things that I want to do? Because there's a lot going on up here that I still have to do, but I want to make sure that I'm actually able to do that. I fear that if my body doesn't hold up long enough, that I will become depressed because I won't be able to accomplish everything.
Interesting.
But I've got decades to go.
Anyone else want to comment? Yeah, Joe.
Well, I was thinking about, I put down 10 years because I'm 92, and I think it would be great to be able to see my great grandchildren, age 5, 6 anyhow. So I was looking forward to that.
Yeah.
An aspiration, I guess.
Yeah, but one that's very much tied to values and what you care about and family. Yeah, Linda.
Yes. I am 72. I like the thought of 88 myself. That gives me only 16 more years. But I have 2 grandchildren that are 6 and 4, and I really enjoy them, and I feel like I contribute to their lives. So that's my purpose. But also, it's disheartening to think of living to that age if I'm going to be a burden on anybody. I watched that with my mom, and she's 91, and it's very depressing for her. And it's a struggle for my sister and myself sometimes. So it's hard to really give an age because it depends on how you're living it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is all hypothetical too. None of us
Right.
know what that future holds. But if you're retirement planning like I am, you actually have to think about it in a nuts and bolts kind of way.
Yeah.
Feels a little bit odd, but yeah. Thank you. So Marjorie, did you have your hand up, or am I just no? Okay, all right, just checking.
I have not been able to get into the poll, but I would not have put any number of years there. I'm a few weeks shy of 80. And if I can continue the way I am, I just want to keep on living for as long as it lasts. And to Star's point, as long as my money lasts.
Yeah.
I mean, facetiously, I look at my savings and my IRA, and I divide it and see how many, like I figure out about how much I need for a year to live. And I divide it by that, and I think, oh, I've got 15 years worth. And if I eat less, maybe I have 20 years worth.
So one of the issues we're talking about here, some of you have heard me talk about before, is this idea of health span. Longevity in a lifespan frame is no good if the last decade of your life you are very debilitated and you can't enjoy good quality of life. And health span is the period of life where we are still vigorous and healthy enough to do the things we care to do and care about. It doesn't mean perfect health, because with aging, changes in health are inevitable, but it means, health span really means that you can do the stuff you care about, you're healthy enough. And this is really what we talk about a lot more, this notion of health span, than we do lifespan. Longevity without health is really it's a tough thing to think about. And that came into, I think, a number of our estimations of how much longer we'd like to live. And this is really where the science of gerontology is going. Can we work to extend health? What are the interventions that can be done to extend that healthy period? And aging itself is being looked at as a target for treatment, whether it be through vitamin supplementation. Now, some of that is, there's a lot of snake oil out there, but there are certain things we know if you take, make a difference. So for example, if you're on a statin, I am, because I have high cholesterol, but statins seem to have a longevity benefit. There's another drug out there that is being studied to extend health span, and it's a drug called I think it's metformin, for used in, I think, in diabetes care. But it's another one of these medicines that seems to actually extend health span. So it's an exciting time, and it could change the face of aging if we're successful. And the idea is shifting the curve from normal aging, which might be, and depending upon the two drawings I picked up, would be either the left-hand lines, pushing it out to allow for a longer period of high functioning until that final period of life. There's always going to be that final period, but the idea is to extend the healthy portion out. Was someone going to say something?
I was going to say, you know, we read, a lot of us over 70 are getting the vaccine, but there's this whole cohort out there that is refusing or wearing a mask. And they're I don't know, you know, what good is this? This is a life taking away illness, you know, I mean, I don't know. That's all. I was just bringing it up. It's a crazy time because those of us who do what we're supposed to have a good chance of living, but there's a big swath that has a weird attitude now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great topic. I don't think we have time to tackle it, not right now, but it is. I mean, and these two graphics I showed are pre-pandemic. You know what, and I am going to show a graphic that relates to the pandemic once I give Joe the floor. But I like to think about, let me just share my screen again here quick. You know, the longevity dividend sort of has other dividends built into it that I think, you know, can work synergistically. You know, the notion of a health dividend is that idea of health span. The two quotes I shared with you earlier in the presentation were getting at sort of the economic or occupational dividend, that people can actually be productive members of society in ways that they would have been when they're 40 or 50, well into their 80s, and that can have some real benefit. If you can be healthy and productive, there's definitely a quality of life dividend, and there may be others in the midst. And so when Joe and I talked about today's presentation, I was going to be the academic dude, and Joe was going to be the heart dude. So, and speak from the heart. And Joe, I'm revealing your age in the title slide. I hope you're not going to shoot me. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Joe to share some of his thoughts about living the longevity dividend.
So I'm going to break a lot of the molds of aging. First of all, I was born in the late 1930s. I'm a product of the decade of the 60s, the 1960s. So I spent some time in the military. I was part of the Black movement of the 1960s, revolutionary. I was part of the feminist movement and also part of the men trying to get their act together to figure out why feminists, radical feminists, were pointing fingers at us. So I went through all this in the 60s. Also, the 60s were a time of a couple of degrees for me, and my last degree was in 1975. So I've been a seeker of truth. And the thesis I wrote on truth back in 1969 was left for me to say, Joe, you're not finished. The academicians that I work with said, no, no, this is enough for you to pass, but you're going to spend the rest of your life understanding what truth means, not only from your own perspective, but the perspective of others. So I packed that up in my medicine bag, and then, the 70s, and all of a sudden, here we are in 2021, and I'm looking at lots of things. So what I try to do is break the mold, step out of the comfort zone of our aging population and saying, all right, well, what's the first thing? First thing is to break Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Take all the rungs out and just say, let's just keep the bottom rung and make it work for all of us. Because if you think about our age, climbing ladders could be very dangerous for our health in our 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100s. So Maslow was good way back then, but he didn't think about older people trying to climb up this ladder to finally reach self-actualization. I believe self-actualization is at the bottom. That's what we're about. That's what we're born into. We're born into a mystic journey. So I've been on my mystic journey for a long time. In my mystic journey, what do I look for? I look for lots of vocabulary words that really make sense for me. And the last of these, and it's not my bottom line, is financial. I mean, we place so much emphasis, so much research into financial survival. And I believe it's causing a lot of angst. I hear with Tom, what age this and what age that, and it's not food for thought. I think it creates a nemesis inside ourselves that's like a cancer. So what I try to do is look at all these terms, in the old aging process. Quality of life, very important. Acceptance. Most important thing is accepting ourselves where we are. Another word I love is under the letter B, bold. We need to be bold, not continue to shrink. And I'm physically shrinking. And it's scary. It's scary when you're physically shrinking, but I have attitude. Like somebody mentioned that earlier. I think it was Ted maybe mentioned about attitude. Attitude is so important. The other piece I found that's really important over the years is we have a couple of aspects inside all of us. One is the aspect of the healer. We forget about that because most of us listen to outside sources to give us the wisdom about everything, financial, health, because everybody else knows more than we do. Well, I take that back and I erase the tabula rasa on that. No, we know a lot about ourselves if we're able to listen to the inner healer. Another aspect of myself that I listen to a lot is the inner gardener. So what is an inner gardener? Inner gardener is that aspect that plants the seeds for concepts, ideals, ideas, purpose. And many times my gardener will plant some early seeds, and I'm always looking at my garden to say, how come these are not coming to fruition? So it's very easy to get frustrated with ourselves by things that don't come to fruition. However, if we just step back, take a deep breath on all aspects, and say, maybe timing is not right. We have seasons. You look outside now, as I walk my neighborhood in Deering Center, all kinds of things blossoming. This bud and that bud. And I'm excited for spring, very excited for spring. So I know spring is a time for me to start to spread my wings. Time for me to look at my garden. What's blossoming? What's not blossoming? And everything isn't always, apple pie. Everything isn't always wonderful because we have lots of aspects going on right now outside of ourselves that are affecting our lives. One of them is the pandemic. Two is tremendous amount of fears and lies. It's hard to believe from the leaderships in the world who's telling the truth. So again, what do? When I'm in a fog like this, I defog myself. I go back inside and I talk to aspects of myself like we all need to do because we have history. We all have history. We have 60, 70, 80, 90 years worth of history. In our history, we've learned a lot because we were part of history. Some of us directly, some of us indirectly. We learned a lot. Wisdom is so important. We are all sages. And it's also important to have, I heard purpose. Purpose, number one for me. Also, number two is to remember that also inside of us is a character I like to call the warrior. The warrior. The warrior is probably one of the strong human aspects of ourselves that pulls us through. How many times have we called on our warrior when we almost died through surgery? Something happened in the military. We escaped from some horrible experience, whether it was natural or unnatural. The warrior pulled us through. Or I like to think of also the other aspects of, the feminine too, that also are very healing. So I've spent most of my life looking at what's important. So what's important to me? Being one with nature. Being one with nature. So I'm a hugger of trees. Every night we have our inside plants from the summer inside through the other seasons. Every night I sing to our plants, and I sing from different positions. And I sing one similar song called Let It Be, which was written by John Lennon. It's a powerful song about faith, about hope. And then I move around the plants because I'm always in a different position to make sure I'm embracing and I'm looking at all the plants in my house. That gives me hope, makes me feel happy inside that I can be one with nature. We all need to be one with nature. And I think a lot of what's happening today is we've fallen out of grace with nature. And Mother Nature right now is very unhappy. So we hear about, especially among young children and younger people, the importance of becoming wise and sages again to nature, so nature can produce for us for the future. So I look at all this stuff and I say, all right, so I'm not an outcast, I'm an outliner. I like being on the outlines of things and looking inside and saying, how can we collectively, when you look at all the people on the screen, you add up all our ages, and I'll bet you we're a good over, circulating close to 2,000 years here that we have. We collect all our ages. And that's a lot of wisdom. It's a lot of wisdom. So I think in aging and aging with quality of life and letting go with a lot of what I call things that are placed on us. Society puts a lot of pressures on us as aging people. We need to behave like this. We need to look like this. We need to make sure we don't do that. Otherwise, something terrible is going to happen. I say this for fun. Raise your glass at the end of the day, whether it's single malt scotch, nice beer, some great wine. Enjoy life. Stop worrying about the things that we can't control, because there's a lot we can't control. But joy, happiness, and my biggest one, Tom knows, is the word love. And I send Tom a lot of love because I love that man. He is really, and with his center, has given me so much more purpose to look at my life, look at our lives together, and to not be afraid, because fear is a crippler. Fear to me is the worst cancer, to be afraid of anything and allow that fear to completely overwhelm us and take away joy, love, acceptance, happiness, awe, creativity, curiosity. Why shouldn't we have it? Why should we have all these things? Children have it. And what happens? Society takes away from children. So we need to be the givers, to give back to our great-grandchildren, grandchildren, children, the world. Love, unconditional love. I love you just the way you are. Unconditional acceptance. You are just the way you are, and you're perfect. So that's the joy of living for me, and to take responsibility, which I do, because I'm here to serve. This is a lifetime of service for me. And I've been serving for a long time, plus 50, almost 60 years of service. Am I happy? I'm thrilled because I get so much back that's not financial. So let's stop worrying about the dollars. Let's concentrate more on the quality of life and the quality of giving. So that's what I have to say. And as much as you want to, get out of the box and rewrap yourself. Put yourself in a new box and wrap yourself up and say, here I am. I'm the gift waiting to be received by others. So we're all gifts. Tom, thank you for your center. Your center has given all of us and others that are not here a tremendous purpose in life to get together, share, and love each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Would anyone like to speak in response to Joe?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm reminded of the Beatles tune, "All You Need Is Love."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fran?
Yes, I love that the notion that just connecting with nature, and that's something that I really value. And I was reading just today how the divine is in nature, but our current society doesn't want to embrace that because we have been so harmful to nature. And we don't want to say that nature is divine because of the way we treat it. And then on the flip side of that, if I take nature as being divine, I'm going to try to be a good steward of nature.
Thank you, Joe, again.
You're welcome, Tom.
So, and I love this picture of Joe. This was taken and appeared in, I think it appeared in the newspaper, didn't it, Joe? I think. Okay. So longevity and the pandemic. What does the longevity dividend mean as we emerge from this crisis? I don't have any big answers to that question, except that I wanted to share. I'm stealing from NPR, but NPR does such a nice job. Or PBS, excuse me, I'm saying NPR, PBS. So this is data through the end of 2020, and it's US life expectancy factoring in this pandemic. And as Jessica was bringing out, the pandemic is a huge issue right now with respect to health span and years lived or lifespan, and it's having a differential impact. So minority groups are particularly impacted, such that Black males are experiencing a drop in average life expectancy of 3 full years, as noted on the right-hand side. So it's having differential impacts, and these are related to the health disparities that we've been aware of for a long time. So here in the midst, we're talking about a longevity dividend when we have this worldwide pandemic that's impacting longevity. And I know for me, one of the outcomes of the pandemic has been to be thinking a lot about what is the future that I want for myself and my family? What do I care about in my life? I've been doing a lot of self-reflection, and I'm wondering if that's true for others. And I have a little poll that I would like to try out and then maybe talk about. Rather than talking about this slide, we're going to do the poll and then just kind of talk about this notion of emerging from the pandemic and what it means. So here it is. This is a prioritization poll, and I've given a bunch of statements about future priorities It's not exhaustive because we could have any priorities, but I tried to pick things that might, for some people, be more important than others. And I'd like to kind of talk about this. So, you know, on your separate screen, if you open a separate browser window and type this pollev.com Tom Meuser 522 address, you could respond to this poll. And we're going to start getting rankings among our group as we're seeing here about where your priorities might be among my limited list for your future that might reflect your longevity dividend. Okay, yeah, I don't know what's going on with it. So it jumped up and then went back to there it goes. Okay, now we're changing. Good. So yeah. So take some time. Let's we're gonna let you think about this one. There's a lot to digest in this. So we'll let it go about 2 minutes where we can then stop and take a look at it in terms of where the priorities are for the group. So that I live in happiness in whatever physical or mental state my future may hold is our number one. We've got a close second to that I keep learning new things and have opportunities to share my wisdom with others. Got a tie for third, and it's interesting the way this is breaking out. I didn't write these with the idea that I was actually creating a rank order in what I wrote. I just wrote these as they came to my head. It's interesting how it is, though. We're following the order they're written. Okay, I continue to express. Ooh, we've got some shifts going on here. Interesting. That I remain in good or better health as I am today until just before death. That's an interesting one. Yeah, that's tied for third. It's kind of hard to rank order these, isn't it? All right, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen. Let's talk about what was it like to do this little exercise. Anyone have a comment about the choices you were making and what was going through your head? Yeah, Star.
It was very interesting. And then I was thinking, why didn't I have the number one response as number one on mine until I reviewed it again, because the happiness response was number 6 on my chart. Because if I have the other pieces, I know I'm already happy.
Ah, so these overlap really in many ways. Yeah, yeah. How about for other people?
I was thinking I want to live in happiness no matter what, because that gives me it's who I am. I mean, it's being happy for me is being able to interact and being able to enjoy other people and be able to learn and to travel. It's all those other things. And if I can do that in whatever physical way I am, even if it's through books and people talking to people like we are during the pandemic, then I'm okay. I want to live very long that way.
Yeah, thank you.
I-
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I kind of noticed that the ones that involved like travel or jobs like that, those went to the bottom, and the ones that were well, I had my number one as continuing to engage with other people, because I have really found during this pandemic through Zooming with just, about 3 groups, including legacy scholars, it's like been amazing relationships and bonds that I have formed by meeting other people. And Joe, I wanted to say to you, I wish you could join all my other Zooms. I would love those other people to hear, that was just incredible what he said. Joe, I think you're an amazing person is what.
Thanks. Thank you.
I second that. So, I don't have any great words of wisdom with respect to the pandemic. This is shaking, our healthcare systems are very challenged. The economics of how we age and support health are very challenged right now. Disparities with respect to longevity and this dividend are big. We are, many of us in this room, I guess I can't speak for it. I would say that I'm privileged. Because of my race, because of my socioeconomic background. I fear that aging trajectories, which prior to the pandemic were very challenging for some individuals and groups of individuals, that those trajectories are going to be even more challenged and variable depending upon where you come from. And I think in terms of what Joe has shared with us, in terms of the larger values, that the humanness that we all share, I would love to live in a nation where we can prioritize that basic support and care for all people, and not be so divided.
Yeah.
Another topic we've talked about in the context of some of our meetings is ageism. This notion of treating people or believe differently as they age, or believing less of them with respect to their aging. And I think that's another factor in the background that I'll be interested to see how it plays out. On some levels, it seemed like people have been more appreciative and understanding to the challenges being older in the midst of a pandemic. But now we're in this really weird space where the older adults are vaccinated and are getting out, and it's the younger adults that are getting hit by the pandemic. That's, just, concerning to me. So we're almost at our time, and I want to make mention of a couple of things. I'm going to leave with all of you the question of, do you understand the longevity dividend differently? Maybe you didn't know even what it exactly was before you came in, but we all sort of know what it is. We're living longer. But, let me know if there's aspects of this conversation you'd like to continue, and I think we can have a follow-up. Some of you have heard about our Living Tapestries project, and Joe and I are very much involved in this, so is Kelly. And Reggie too, where we are doing recorded interviews, kind of StoryCorps style, StoryCorps for NPR, where they're audio recorded interviews. We do them through Zoom, and they're very much focused on life wisdom and life lessons. And so I think the testimony Joe just gave is perfect Living Tapestries testimony. It's a project that we're doing in our spare time while we're juggling multiple other projects, and we're not as far along as we'd like to be in developing the website for it and getting everything processed. But if anyone would be interested in sitting for an audio interview, we'll include a link to register for Living Tapestries in Kelly's next blast about what's going on with the center. And actually, Kelly, we can include this in the newsletter we're finishing up. I want to also make note today of something I think is really happy and emergent. The first post-pandemic in-person event for Legacy Scholars will be on Saturday, May the 8th. I'm about to send an email to everybody. It will be at the Art Museum on the Portland campus. We have approval from the provost that groups of 18 scholars, masked. So whether you're vaccinated or not, you still got to wear the mask. And we're going to offer 5 50-minute, so 50-minute tours. Our curator of our exhibits, Hillary Irons, will lead each tour. The first floor of the Art Museum has these amazing Nigerian masks. Some of you heard about them. We did one of our Zoom events looking at this exhibit, and we're going to actually do it in person on May the 8th. But these date back to the 1800s, and these masks, the tribe, I forget the name of the tribe, but the tribe considers a mask to be a whole body covering, and they're really interesting.